Right. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everyone. Thank you for watching this video. So we are now in the topic of number 9, identification of halal control point, or we call it SCP. This is the topic or one of the topics in part 2103 halal assurance system. So now you are with me. I'm Muhammad Shiran Abdullah Sani, your instructor for this class. Okay, in previous topic we share or we discuss about topic number 8, which is this one. Okay, if you can recall this topic on identification of halal ingredients using tree diagram. And then if you remember, one of the part that you need to know about this halal assurance system is you need to know about the list of ingredients that shall be halal certified. Okay, so let me open the Malaysia Halal Management System 2020, the reference for this topic. While waiting for that, okay, if we recall what we have learned in this topic, we talk about all ingredients that we have can be identified into three groups, or we call it three decision point. The first one is critical point, non-critical point, and haram. Okay, and if it is critical, you have to request halal certificate from the supplier. Okay, if it is non-critical, okay, there are additional we call it, or other documents needed. It's not necessary to get halal certificate, but you can request to get it for a while to get other documents such as like this one, product specification. Okay, we can also request of flow diagram. Okay, and we can also request for material safety data sheet. In other document that we can request is the laboratory report. Okay, the aim of having this product specification and material safety data sheet, you have to make sure in the document that there is information spelled out as what are the origin of those ingredients. Alright, so talking about this Malaysia standard as a your reference, let's start first. Okay, this is Malaysia Halal Management System. Okay, raw material. If you remember when you learned about the few steps talking about uh, product description, okay, it's compulsory to have a raw material master list. Okay, so how it looks like this. Okay, and to make it clearer, it's like this raw material master list. I'm sorry, this is in Malay. So if you look at this raw material master list, let me copy this one first and make it as the note. Right, and just paste it here. Set. Okay, so this is the raw material master list. Okay, if you learn in this about this raw material master list in the few steps before this section, this topic, you need to make sure that all ingredients that you use in your product uh, shall be spelled out in this table, so we can have this the ingredient list, and then a scientific name of their special name, okay, the source of that ingredient, okay, the manufacturer, and then if it is halal or not, okay, if they have a halal certificate, who are the issuer, which country that issue the halal certificate, or which certification body that issue the halal certificate. And then you can have the expiry date for the halal certificate. And then you can see there is a column here to say about the supporting document. Okay. And then last but not least is the reference, or we call it the additional information related to the ingredient. So let's talk about this one. Okay. This requirement to have this raw material master list actually is under the requirement for the step of number one. Okay, so you, in the description, the product or service operation, you have to spell out uh the table, this table. Okay, so this one you learn from Dr. Spicer's section. Okay, and then in Dr. Spicer's section as well, you need to draw a flow diagram and plant schematic diagram. Okay, this is important because it will be used in this topic, halal critical point. Okay, let's talk about this one a little bit. So since we learned in the previous topic about this topic number 8, yeah, identification of this status of the ingredient, whether it's critical point, no critical point, and haram. So before we come out to, or we reach to this decision, we need to have this list of ingredient. Okay, so if you see in the list of ingredient, they spell out here, you need to state the status of your halal ingredient, the halal status of the ingredient. So if it is critical, as spelled out in the previous topic, this one, if it is critical, you need to request the halal certificate from the supplier. So that's why you see this column. Okay, so this is for critical. Okay, and you can see, for example, here they say that they have the halal certification body as Jakim that issue the halal certificate. You have FCA, SICOT, MOIS. Okay, these are the certification body. Okay, SICOT is from Thailand, MOIS from Singapore, for example. But if the ingredient is not so critical, or we call it not critical, such like the sodium hyaluronate, they are not required to have halal certificate. But you can see at this column there is a supporting document. So you can see there is a process flow diagram here, the product specification, material safety data sheet, certificate of origin, CO in certificate of origin. So these are the indication of this ingredient is not so critical. So that's why the we as the uh, we call it an entity who get halal certificate, or who want to get halal certificate for our product, shall request these document from the supplier. Okay, so this is in the case of why in this chapter number 8 we talk about this critical point, non-critical point, and also haram. So it is common approach. Yeah, if you find out that your ingredient is haram, definitely you need to replace the ingredient. No document needed to prove whether it's haram or not. Okay, but when once you know the ingredient is haram, so you have to replace the ingredient. So in the case of you have a critical, a critical ingredient, you need to have a halal certificate. If it is not so critical, or we call it non-critical ingredient, you don't need to get halal certificate, but you need a list of supporting document. Okay, so this is the first step. So talking about this, okay, uh, talking about this topic of halal critical point or halal control point. Okay, we shall start with the concept of halal toiban first. Okay, so we know the concept of halal toiban is your ingredient or your processes doesn't have contamination in terms of porcine, no alcohol. Okay, alcohol, no pork. Okay, but you will have to take note as well. In this one also cover the topic of toiban. Okay, so when we say about toiban, it should be safe, and then we call it clean, and then nutritious. Okay, so having this information, in order for us to say that our product is halal and tayyib, okay, usually we will encounter uh, halal threat, or we call it challenges. So those challenges, we call it halal threat, or in other words, we sometimes call it as pollution, or sometimes we call it contaminant. So in common term that people use is the challenge can be halal threat or we can say contaminant. So this halal threat is a contaminant that will affect the status of your halal and tayyib product. So in order for us to control this halal threat, we need to have this halal control point evaluation. So in order for us to evaluate the halal control point, the evaluate the halal challenge or halal threat, okay, we need to adopt a concept of halalan tayyiban risk management plan. Okay, the first step to address the halal tayyiban risk management plan, definitely you need to identify the halal tayyiban contaminant or precursor. Okay, from here it covers two stages. Okay, so in order for us to cover that stages, it shall require us to have this process. Okay, by collecting and evaluating information on the non-halal contaminant and condition leading to their presence to decide which are significant for halal Taliban assurance and shall be addressed in the halal assurance system plan. Okay, so which plan we are referring for? This is referring to this one actually, halal Taliban risk management plan. Okay, so it must be done on the existing product or process type, and for each new product, it must be reviewed if any changes are made in raw materials, product formulation, preparation, processing, packaging, and distribution or intended use. So if you can see, there is a term about talking about the product, okay, um, uh, a raw material, and then process. So raw materials here referring to our list of raw material that we say. If you change your ingredient, your decision tree in table 8 will also need to be carried out or evaluated. Okay. So another term here we talk about process type. Okay. If you refer in your class, previous class with Dr. Faisal, the second stage to establish halal assurance system is to draw a flow diagram and plant schematic diagram. If you learn that Dr. Faisal share the exercise of developing procedure, remember? So actually the procedure can be represented by developing a flow diagram. Okay, and for each of a company that has that want to get halal certificate, they need to draw one flow diagram for one product. Then they need to draw a plant schematic diagram for the premise, meaning that for the production line. Okay, so from this flow diagram actually, it will help us on identifying any contaminant or any halal threat in the processes. Okay, so let's see about uh, finding the halal thread in material. Okay, when we talk about finding the halal thread in materials and processes, there are some requirements for us to obtain. Okay, the first thing in the premise, in the production line, usually we will ask your opinion from the employee who has a vast knowledge and experience during the processes. That's why if we refer into internal halal committee, for those who took classes talking about internal halal committee, subtopic, there are minimum 4 individual required in this committee. The first one is chairman. The second one is halal executive. The third one is representative from production. Sometimes we call it supervisor. And then we need a representative from the procurement. Okay. So talking about finding a knowledge and experienced workers, so usually we need to get these two personnel, representative from production and representative from procurement to assist on identifying halal threat or contaminant in the process. Okay. So another word is if you draw a flow diagram, from that flow diagram of the process, you need to ask the experienced workers to inform you which step of the process might lead to or might encounter contaminants during the process. Okay. So beside of that, there are also documents that we can refer to identify the potential contaminant in the processes. One of it is, and also in material, one of it is to look at the document talking about reworking, okay, return, and product complaints and recall. So when we say about reworking, it is like when you draw, when you make one product, the product is become contaminated, or it has a bad quality, for example, but you can repair that product. So repairing this product, we call it reworking. Okay. And then if you say about returns, as the company during their operation, when they produce or they manufactured the final product, and it's been delivered to clients premises, have they received a return of the product because of the non-compliance of the product? Meaning maybe the product is broken down, the product packaging is torn out, for example, there is no, or there is a change of color, smell, or we call it structure on the product. I think so. That is called return. And have you heard about product complaint? Okay, so usually if you remember when we go to any industrial places, especially that produce a product, um, at the premise they have a small box with, and then they allow us to key in or to putting in small papers, and then we can file a complaint there, or we can make a comment for that. Okay, so another report or record that we can refer is recalls. Have you heard about recalls? Recall is like we take back or we call back the product which already in the market when the products might uh, impose health and safety issues to customers. Okay, if you remember, there is I think last year there is a case of there is I think Campbell soup. Okay, they this Campbell soup was recalled from the market because of there are so they found that this soup contain we call it smell, changing of color. There are some soapy condition in the, is it soapy condition, something like having bacteria produced or contaminated soup, so it's being recalled from the market. Okay, so all these four document or record can be referred if you want to know the potential of halal threat or contaminant that your premise might encounter, okay, or the premise that might encounter during your production. Okay, so beside of having experienced people to explain, you also can request document. So usually if I'm an auditor from their team, I will request this type of documentation. So from here, we can investigate, okay, uh, from which process that might lead to the uh, contaminant occurrence, okay, contamination occurrence. And beside of that, there are document as well. We call it external information that you can get, talking about the publication related to halal product or services, national fatwa, halal issues from the Halal Hub webpage or other reliable media. Okay, if you remember, there is we call it a concept of ajalala animal, ajalala. Ajalala means those animals, actually they are halal animal, but the feed that been given to this animal are non-halal or it's not toying. Okay, maybe some pieces, maybe they give the pork, to this halal animal. So this halal animal is considered a jalala. Okay, so based on fatwa, this animal shall be we call it quarantine. Okay, but now as time goes by, is it going to be the fatwa of quarantining this animal is still valid, or is it have been changing? Okay, so having the new fatwa might lead uh, to assist us on there are some possibility of contamination. uh, in the processes, especially when we purchase an ingredient, which is ajalalan animal, for example. Okay, so having this identification of halal threat, they can be focused on the material itself and also can be focused in the processes. But when we talk on material, it's simple. We already learned in the previous class talking about this identification of contaminant here under critical to pinpoint whether they are critical, non-critical point or haram. Okay, so talking about this, you have to look back on the list of ingredients, check one by one, identify whether they're critical or non-critical, and then make sure you have the supporting document. Okay, and then for processes, uh, sorry. So for processes, we can go to another section. Let's talk about ingredient first or material. So when we talk about this list of ingredient, okay, it's not only cover about the ingredient itself, but you have to state the potential of contaminant or halal threat in other sections such as additive that being used, processing aid. Yeah, we are not talking about halal threat on material in the ingredient alone, in the that being used to produce the product, but other supporting aid or processing aid. For example, you want to produce a bakery product, so you have your ingredient, your sugar, your salt, your flour, and so on and so forth. But have you take that in consideration during the processing? You may need or you may use some brushes. So these brushes is one of processing aid, and some brushes actually they were made or they are made of or made from pig bristle, bulu babi lah. Okay, so these processing aid as well shall be recorded in this table actually. Okay, if you look at this raw material master list given by Jakim, those information or that they state as the raw material, they only talk about ingredient. Actually, you need to add those brushes get involved. Okay, what else? The cleaning agent, your soap, clean dishes, soap for dishes, for example, or in some condition, for example, your processing technology, uh, that perhaps you have stove, eh, you have freezer, you have chiller, okay, and then these are the processing aid and processing technologies that have a direct contact to your product. Okay, so that's why you need to declare as well in this table not only about ingredient but also about those supporting aid or processing aid and as well as machinery that get involved. Not only talking about that, okay, we need to know about uh, what else are we calling? For example, you have a machine. In order for that machine to properly operate it, you need some oil, minyak, to make it operating in a smooth condition. Okay, so that oil as well is considered a processing technologies or processing aid that shall be declared in this table. Okay, so talking about ingredient, uh, you need to identify the origin of each ingredient. Okay, and then if you get involved with formulated material or ingredient in some premises or production, before they start to produce the final product, for example, they want to make we call it milk, okay, uh, dairy milk, for example. So before they decide to decide on having this dairy milk, they might be having a R&D section, research and development section, where in the research and development section, they will decide what are the steps needed for them to prepare that milk. Okay, you can see some during the Ramadan, there are some milk manufacturing facilities. They prepare a new type of milk, for example, a kurma, okay, milk, for example, or date milk. Okay, so when they want to mix this, the extract of the date combined with the milk, so there is a need of a section of R&D section before they produce in a bulk, sebelum dia buat secara besar-besaran lah. Okay, so uh, identification of material and ingredient here in this note is also stated that you need to identify each of the ingredients, whether they are uh, plant product, animal, microbial, and other materials using the decision tree. This decision tree we have learned in the previous slide. Okay, so from here we actually have reached to identify the material contaminant, identification of contaminant in material. Okay, so that's why we have this decision tree, and then in the non-critical, that decision tree can decide whether it's critical point, non-critical point, or haram. All right. So talking about that one is completed. We have reached or completed the part of identification of contaminant in the ingredient. Now we want to identify contaminants in process. So we will use the Halal Toyiban Risk Management Plan. Okay. And in this Halal Toyiban Risk Management Plan, okay, you need to evaluate the halal threat or contaminant based on likelihood and severity of occurrence of the potential halal threat in precursor. Okay, so talking about this one, okay, the step get involved is you need to identify contaminant, and then uh, again from this contaminant you need to evaluate the likelihood and severity. Likelihood means kebarangkalian, the probability the contaminant occur. Severity means if contamination occur, how bad it will affect your company. Okay, and then you will need to record this activity. Okay, so where do you need to start? Okay, if you want to start about this one, you need to go to step number two. Number two that you learned in Dr. Faisal's section. Remember we talked about flow diagram. Okay, so for each of your product, you need to have a flow diagram. Okay, for example, this is the slide example that I received from the participant. Right? Let me show you another example. But I'm sorry, this is in Malay. I think this one we will shall have a discussion in the class. Okay, for example, so this product they want to prepare or to produce donut. So they prepare the ingredient here, all this flour, yeast, water, salt, eggs, yeah, oil, so on and so forth. And then they prepare a flow diagram based on the procedure on how to make a donut. They prepare a flow diagram. So they start with purchasing of all these ingredients, prepare this ingredient, mixing all this water, salt, sugar, and then they uh, uh, combine the we call it the flour and also the egg, and then they mix all of them, making into a dough. Okay, and then they cook it, and then they mix into a donut. Okay, sorry, they make into a donut form first, and then they cook, and then they toast the oil, for example. So these are the flow diagrams. So we will have a specific discussion on this. Perhaps I will change it into English later on. But for this one, this is the one that you prepare in the stage number 2 of Halal Assurance System with Dr. Faisal section. So from here, you will convert all this flow, all the step, flow step, we call it process step, into this table. So that's why you can see there is a column here, evaluation of likelihood and severity. Likelihood here, severity, and from here you will calculate a risk range. Okay, so I think I will end this session of identifying halal control point up to this session first. So this topic has it's quite big actually. It's not big, quite important, especially in the production that have halal certification. So this topic halal identification of halal control point will have part 1 and part 2. So today is the part 1. So we will discuss in other classes for talking about part 2. It will start with this kind of flow diagram first. This is an example in food production. You also can prepare a flow diagram for cosmetic, for pharmaceutical. and we will evaluate this flow diagram in the next class uh, that using this table. Table 1, we call it Halal and Taliban Halal Control Point table. Okay. Uh, I think that's all for now. We shall meet in the next classes talking about identification of Halal Control Point Type 2. Okay, that's all. Again, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.